Welcome to the Deep Sleep Science Channel. Tonight, we're exploring a creature so vast that its heart is the size of a car, its tongue can weigh as much as an elephant, and its voice can travel across entire oceans. Imagine an animal larger than any dinosaur, moving silently through the deep, living on some of the smallest creatures on Earth. A giant that doesn't hunt with teeth, but instead swallows entire clouds of life in a single motion, filtering the ocean itself for food. As you listen, you'll uncover how something so massive can move so gently, how it survives on tiny krill, and how its life stretches across entire oceans in quiet, seasonal rhythms. The deeper we go, the more surprising it becomes, because the largest animal to ever exist is also one of the most peaceful. So settle in, relax, and let your mind drift into the calm, endless blue. The blue whale is the largest animal known to have ever lived on Earth. That means not just the largest whale, and not just the largest animal alive today, but the largest animal known from the entire history of life that scientists have been able to study. When we picture something so vast, it is almost hard for the mind to hold it clearly, because very few living things compare to it in any familiar way. By mass, blue whales are larger than any dinosaur currently known from the fossil record. Dinosaurs gave us some of the most enormous creatures ever to walk the land, yet the blue whale still surpasses them in sheer body weight. It is one of the clearest reminders that the ocean allowed life to reach sizes that would be much harder to support on land. The tongue of a blue whale can weigh as much as a large elephant. That single body part, just the tongue alone, can match the weight of one of the biggest land animals many people have ever imagined. It shows how every feature inside a blue whale must scale upward to support a body of such extreme size. The heart of a blue whale is often compared in size to a small car. This is not just a dramatic image for effect. The whale's body is so large that it needs a truly enormous organ to move blood through that vast system, carrying oxygen and nutrients from one end of the body to the other. Blue whales have the biggest hearts known in the animal kingdom. No other animal studied so far has a heart larger than theirs. It is a fitting detail for the largest animal on Earth, because such a huge life depends on circulation at an equally extraordinary scale. During a lunge, a blue whale can engulf a volume of water comparable to or even greater than its own body mass. For a moment, this giant animal becomes almost like a living net, taking in an immense cloud of seawater and prey all at once. It is one of the most dramatic feeding actions anywhere in nature. Newer research suggests that on especially heavy feeding days, a blue whale may consume around 16 metric tons of krill. That is an astonishing amount of tiny prey gathered into a single day's worth of feeding. It shows how an animal this large survives not by chasing huge prey, but by harvesting immense numbers of very small animals from rich ocean patches. The longest reliably recorded blue whales reached about 33 meters in length. That is longer than many people's first guesses, even if they already know the animal is enormous. When an animal reaches that scale, length stops feeling like a number and starts feeling more like a moving stretch of ocean. Extremely large blue whales can weigh well over 100 metric tons. At that level, ordinary comparisons begin to fail, because most things we know from everyday life are far too small to be useful. The blue whale lives at a scale where its body itself feels almost like part of the landscape. The blue whale remains one of the clearest examples of how a mammal can become enormous by living in the sea and feeding on dense swarms of small prey. Water supports the body, and the ocean can sometimes gather food into rich concentrations, allowing a giant like this to survive. Its very existence tells a deep story about how environment shapes what kind of life is possible. Its body shows how buoyancy, efficient oxygen storage, and specialized feeding can support extreme size. A whale this large is not simply oversized in a random way. Its body works because many systems, from movement to breathing to feeding, are all matched to life in the sea. Its ecology shows that tiny krill can support a body larger than any dinosaur. That idea feels almost backwards at first, because we tend to expect giant predators to eat giant prey. But blue whales show that vast size can also be built on huge numbers of tiny animals, as long as the ocean gathers them densely enough. Its physiology shows that gigantism requires not just big muscles and bones, but finely tuned breathing, circulation, and feeding mechanics. A giant animal cannot function through size alone. It must also operate with remarkable precision, because every breath, dive, and feeding motion has to work efficiently at a massive scale. Its migrations show how a single species can link tropical and polar waters within the same lifetime. A blue whale may feed in colder, food-rich seas and then move toward warmer waters later in the year. In this way, one animal can connect distant regions of the planet through its yearly movement. Its calls show that some of the ocean's most important communication happens below the range of normal human hearing. Much of the blue whale's world unfolds in deep, low notes, but our ears often miss entirely. So even when the ocean seems quiet to us, it may still carry the voices of giant animals across great distances. Its history shows both the destructive power of industrial hunting and the value of international protection. Blue whales were once pushed down by modern whaling on an enormous scale. Their survival today is tied not only to biology, but also to decisions humans made and later worked to correct. Its present condition shows that even the largest animal on Earth can be vulnerable. Size alone does not make a species safe. A blue whale may be stronger and bigger than any other animal, yet it can still be threatened by ships, noise, changing oceans, and the long shadow of past exploitation. The blue whale is both an ocean giant and a highly specialized filter-feeding mammal whose life depends on precision as much as size. It is not simply a huge body drifting through the sea. It is a finely tuned living system, one that survives by doing many difficult things with great accuracy. Blue whale calls are among the loudest biological sounds known. These immense animals produce deep, powerful notes that can travel through seawater far beyond the range of sight. Their voices suit the scale of the open ocean, where distance is vast and sound can carry meaning farther than light. During dives, scientific studies have found that blue whale heart rates can fall to only a few beats per minute. That is a remarkable slowing of the body, a way of conserving oxygen while the whale remains underwater. It reveals how even a giant must become calm and efficient when moving through the deep. Their calls can travel great distances underwater. Sound moves extremely well through the sea, especially at the low frequencies blue whales often use. Because of that, a whale does not need to be close to another one to be heard, which helps explain how animals spread across great spaces can still remain acoustically connected. Blue whales are found in every major ocean except the Arctic. Their range is vast, stretching across much of the planet's marine world. Even so, their presence is never random, because where they go depends closely on where food can be found. They are generally absent from the central Arctic's ice-covered waters. That pattern helps show that even a creature of this size still has clear ecological limits. A blue whale may be global in range, but it is not a whale of every sea. Their distribution is strongly linked to where krill concentrate. In other words, their map is partly written by the map of their prey. The whale follows food, and food follows ocean conditions. So the movement of a blue whale is often really a reflection of larger patterns in the sea. Many populations move seasonally between feeding areas and breeding areas. This means their year is often divided between places of rich nutrition and places more suited to reproduction, and early calf care. The movement is part of a repeating ocean rhythm. Summer feeding grounds are usually in colder, food-rich waters. These regions often support the swarms of krill that blue whales depend on. In the productive season, the whales can build up the energy reserves needed for the rest of the year. Winter breeding grounds are usually in warmer, lower latitude waters. These waters are not always the richest for feeding, but they can be more suitable for calving and reproduction. This seasonal shift is one reason the species can connect very different ocean regions. Not every blue whale follows the same migration schedule. Some individuals appear to move differently from the broader pattern. Nature often works this way, with general rules, but also with flexibility depending on the animal and the conditions it experiences. Some individuals seem to skip long migrations or remain in productive areas year-round. This suggests that feeding opportunity can sometimes outweigh the need for long travel. If food is good enough in one place, a whale may not need to follow the more typical route. Researchers still do not know all of their migratory routes in detail. Even with modern tools, blue whales remain difficult to fully follow across the open ocean. Their world is vast, and they spend much of their lives far from shore and out of sight. Food availability appears to be one of the strongest factors shaping where they go. That simple truth sits at the center of much of blue whale ecology. The largest animal on Earth is still guided, in a very direct way, by where enough food gathers. Blue whales are among the most specialized krill feeders on the planet. Their entire feeding system is shaped around finding, engulfing, and filtering dense swarms of these tiny animals. This is not a generalist animal eating whatever it happens to encounter. This specialization ties their movements closely to ocean productivity. Where the sea becomes rich and lively, blue whales may appear. Where productivity falls or shifts, the whales may also shift, because their survival depends on these highly productive food systems. Even though they are huge, blue whales live on prey that sits low on the food web. They do not need to hunt large fish or marine mammals to sustain themselves. Instead, they depend on tiny crustaceans that convert ocean productivity into a form giant whales can harvest in bulk. Blue whales belong to the rorqual family, the group of pleated throat whales that also includes fin, sei, and humpback whales. This family is known for a feeding style based on engulfing large amounts of water and prey. Blue whales are perhaps the grandest example of that design. Blue whales are baleen whales, not toothed whales. Instead of teeth for grabbing prey, they have a filtering system made for straining food from seawater. This places them in a very different branch of whale life from species such as dolphins, sperm whales, and orcas. They are mammals, which means they breathe air, produce milk for their young, and maintain warm body temperatures. Even though they live entirely in the sea, their basic biology connects them to other mammals on Earth. In some deep way, they are not fish-like creatures, but gigantic marine mammals with mammalian needs. The body of a blue whale is long, streamlined, and relatively slender for such a massive animal. Its shape helps it move efficiently through the water, rather than pushing against it like a blunt object. Even at tremendous size, the body still reflects the need for hydrodynamic efficiency. Many adult blue whales are commonly around 24 to 30 meters long, rather than record size. That is still an immense body, far beyond the scale of nearly all other animals. Record holders are exceptional, but even an ordinary adult blue whale is an astonishing presence. Adult females are generally slightly larger than adult males. This difference is not unusual in large whales and may relate partly to the energetic demands of reproduction. Carrying and nursing a calf requires a body capable of storing and transferring enormous energy. Blue whales can live for many decades. Their lives unfold slowly compared with those of many smaller animals. a single individual may witness vast changes in ocean conditions and human history over the course of its lifetime. Lifespans of around 80 to 90 years are often cited for blue whales. That means some whales living today may have begun life long before the modern world reached its current form. In a quiet way, they can be living links across generations of ocean time. Before industrial whaling, blue whales were far more numerous than they are today. The seas once held many more of these giants than we see now. That older abundance is difficult to imagine because modern oceans already feel large enough even with so many whales missing. Commercial whalers targeted blue whales for oil and other products. Their size made each animal economically valuable in a system that treated living giants as raw material. This was one of the reasons the species suffered so heavily. Their large size made each whale especially valuable to whaling fleets. A single blue whale represented an enormous quantity of oil and body material. In that tragic arithmetic, the greatness of the animal became one of the reasons it was hunted so intensely. Modern whaling technology made it possible to hunt fast, powerful whales that had once been harder to exploit. Earlier eras did not have the same tools to pursue and kill such large, mobile animals efficiently. Technology changed the balance, and the whales paid the price. Blue whale populations crashed during the 20th century. This decline was not small or local. It happened on a broad scale and altered the place of the species in the world's oceans. Antarctic blue whales were hit especially hard. In the Southern Ocean, the scale of whaling pressure was devastating. Even now, that population remains far below what it once was. In some regions, populations were reduced to only a tiny fraction of former levels. That phrase may sound clinical, but it describes a profound biological loss. It means entire ocean systems were left with only a shadow of the blue whale presence they once held. Blue whales are listed as endangered. This status reflects not only their past decline, but also the fact that recovery is incomplete and threats remain. Being enormous does not place a species beyond danger. A commonly cited worldwide estimate places the global population at about 10, 000 to 25, 000 blue whales. For the largest animal ever known, that is a strikingly small number. It reminds us that rarity and greatness can exist together. That number is still far below pre-whaling abundance. Recovery has happened in some places, but the world has not returned to the blue whale abundance that once existed. The modern ocean still carries the legacy of that earlier collapse. Some regional populations appear to be recovering. This is one of the hopeful parts of the story. Protection has made a difference, even if the process is slow and uneven. Recovery has not been equally strong in every ocean basin. Some regions show more progress than others, depending on past hunting pressure, present-day threats, and ecological conditions. A single global species can still have very different local stories. Population growth can happen slowly even after hunting stops because blue whales reproduce slowly. They do not replace lost numbers quickly. Their recovery depends on time, stability, and oceans rich enough to support both survival and reproduction. Protecting blue whales requires cooperation across governments, researchers, and industries. These whales cross boundaries that do not matter to the ocean, but matter very much to humans. Their future depends on many people making room for a giant species whose life spans enormous distances and many different waters. Blue whales are among the most specialized krill feeders on the planet. This means their feeding system is not built for a wide mix of prey, but instead is strongly focused on tiny crustaceans that gather in enormous swarms. Their size may seem to suggest a broad and powerful appetite, but in reality, their survival depends on repeatedly finding very specific patches of small prey in the open sea. This specialization ties their movements closely to ocean productivity. Blue whales are not simply wandering across the ocean at random, because the places they use most heavily are shaped by where the sea becomes rich enough to support huge numbers of krill. In this way, the life of the blue whale is closely connected to cold currents, nutrient movement, seasonal blooms, and all the larger ocean processes that help food build up in dense layers. In feeding seasons, blue whales can consume several tons of krill per day. That amount is hard to picture because krill are so small, but the whale makes up for that by taking in astonishing numbers of them. A giant body needs giant energy input, and the blue whale meets that need not by eating large prey, but by filtering huge volumes of tiny animals from productive waters. Some estimates put their daily intake at around 6 to 8 tons in commonly cited summaries. Even the lower end of that range is extraordinary, because it means one animal can harvest a mountain of small crustaceans in a single day. This also shows why blue whales depend so much on rich feeding zones, since a body of that size cannot thrive where food is too scattered. Newer research suggests that the biggest feeding days may reach around 16 metric tons. That figure helps reveal just how intense blue whale feeding can be when prey conditions are ideal. On those especially good days, the whale is taking advantage of a temporary ocean abundance, storing energy that may help support travel, survival, and reproduction later on. A blue whale's giant body is supported in part by buoyancy, which is one reason an animal this size can function well in water. In the sea, water helps carry much of the animal's weight, reducing the mechanical burden that would crush or strain a land animal of similar mass. The ocean does not make size easy, but it makes such extreme size physically possible in a way dry land usually does not. On land, an animal of comparable mass would face very different mechanical limits. Bones, joints, muscles, and circulation would all have to cope with constant full body weight pressing downward under gravity. In the water, a blue whale still deals with force and drag, but it is spared the same kind of relentless weight-bearing challenge that land giants would face. Blue whales are larger than any dinosaur currently known from the fossil record by mass. That often surprises people, because dinosaurs are commonly treated as the ultimate symbol of giant animals. But in terms of overall body weight, the blue whale stands above them, showing that the peak of animal size happened not on land, but in the ocean. Their immense size is one reason they are often used as an upper limit example in animal biology. Scientists and educators regularly point to the blue whale when discussing how large an animal can become and still function successfully. The species helps frame questions about metabolism, oxygen storage, feeding mechanics, and the physical limits of life. Even though they are huge, blue whales live on prey that sips low on the food web. Krill are tiny animals, much smaller than the prey many people imagine for such a giant predator. That contrast is one of the most fascinating things about blue whales, because it shows that great size does not always depend on hunting large animals, but can instead depend on immense abundance at lower levels of the Yagra ecosystem. The ton of a blue whale can weigh as much as a large elephant. This detail sounds almost unreal at first, but it makes sense when you remember that the whale's mouth and feeding system must handle enormous masses of water and prey. The tongue is not just large for appearance, but large because it must play a major role in the feeding mechanics of a body of gigantic scale. The heart of a blue whale is often compared in size to a small car. This comparison helps people imagine an organ large enough to pump blood through a body tens of meters long. The heart is central to sustaining the whale's dives, movements, and general metabolism, and its size reflects the challenge of circulating blood through such a vast living system. One NOAA summary estimated the heart at about 400 pounds. That number gives a more concrete sense of scale beyond the familiar car comparison. Even a single organ inside this animal reaches a weight that would be extraordinary in almost any other creature, which helps explain why blue whales are so often used as examples of biological extremes. That heart can pump enormous volumes of blood with each beat. A blue whale cannot rely on the small, rapid circulation pattern seen in much smaller mammals. Instead, each beat must move a powerful surge of blood through great distances inside the body, helping supply oxygen and nutrients to muscles, organs, and tissues during both calm travel and deep feeding dives. The arteries are so large that they are often compared to tunnels or large pipes in popular descriptions. While those comparisons are simplified, they help communicate just how oversized the circulatory system must be. In a body this massive, blood vessels themselves become part of the spectacle, because even the inner transport network must operate at remarkable scale. Blue whales have the biggest hearts known in the animal kingdom. This matches their place as the largest animal known to have lived, but it is still impressive that the organ itself also holds the record. It reminds us that the whale's greatness is not just about outer size, but about the magnitude of the internal systems needed to keep that size alive. Their lungs are also enormous, but they do not breathe continuously like fish extract oxygen from water. A blue whale must return to the surface to take air into its lungs, because it is a mammal, not a fish. This creates a rhythm of diving and surfacing that shapes nearly everything about its behavior in the sea. Every breath must be taken at the surface. That simple fact gives blue whales a very different relationship with the ocean than animals that can stay underwater indefinitely. No matter how large, powerful, or deep diving they are, they remain tied to air above the waves and must regularly rise to meet it. Their respiration is efficient, allowing a lot of oxygen exchange quickly when they surface. This is important because time at the surface exposes the whale, interrupts diving, and limits feeding continuity. The body is therefore adapted to use short breathing periods effectively, helping the whale recharge before the next dive. A surfacing sequence often includes several blows before a deeper dive. These repeated exhalations and inhalations help reset the body's oxygen supply and prepare it for time underwater. For an observer at sea, those blows can be one of the clearest signs that a blue whale is about to disappear beneath the surface again. Blue whales are capable divers, but they are not the deepest diving whales overall. Some other marine mammals go much deeper or stay down much longer. Blue whales are impressive divers, yet their biology is especially shaped by the demands of feeding on krill, not by chasing the deepest possible records in the ocean. Tagged individuals have been recorded diving to more than 300 meters. That is still a significant depth, far below the layer where sunlight feels bright and the surface remains close. It shows that blue whales are not just surface cruisers, but animals able to work through substantial vertical ranges when prey demands it. Many foraging dives are much shallower than their maximum recorded depths. This makes sense because the whale does not dive deeper than necessary if prey is available at easier levels. Like many animals, it balances reward and effort, saving energy when food can be reached without pushing toward greater depth. Typical deep feeding dives often last around 10 to 15 minutes. That length gives the whale enough time to descend, feed, and return without exhausting oxygen stores. For such a huge animal, this is a carefully managed interval, shaped by how much oxygen it can carry and how much energy each feeding dive demands. Their longest measured dives are shorter than what simple body size scaling might predict. At first, people may assume that a bigger animal should always stay underwater longer. But blue whales spend a great deal of energy during feeding, and that cost changes what their dive limits look like in real life. The energetic cost of lunge feeding likely helps explain that pattern. Racing forward, opening the mouth wide, and engulfing huge amounts of water all require major effort. So even though the whale is large and can store a lot of oxygen, the feeding method itself uses energy in a way that shortens how long dives can comfortably last. During dives, blue whales show a strong dive response. This is a set of body adjustments that helps conserve oxygen and support underwater activity. Many diving mammals show some version of this, but in blue whales, it is especially striking because it operates inside the largest living animal on Earth. That dive response includes a slowing of the heart rate. By reducing how fast the heart beats, the whale helps manage oxygen used more carefully while underwater. This slowing is one of the quiet, hidden processes that allows such a massive air-breathing animal to function below the surface for long stretches. In scientific analyses, heart rates during dives have dropped to only a few beats per minute. That is astonishingly slow, especially when compared with the heart rates of smaller mammals. It shows that the whale's body can shift into a calm, energy-saving state that supports efficient diving in deep water. This slowing helps conserve oxygen while the whale is underwater. Oxygen is limited once a dive begins, so the body must spend it wisely. A slower heart means less energy is used in circulation, and more of the stored oxygen can be directed toward the tissues that need it most during the dive. At the surface after a dive, the heart rate speeds up again to recharge oxygen stores. This return to a faster rhythm helps the body restore balance after the low oxygen conditions of diving. In a sense, each dive is a controlled cycle of slowing down below and recovering more actively above. Blue whales rely on oxygen held in the blood and muscles while underwater. They cannot take in new oxygen until they surface again, so what they carry with them has to last the entire dive. Their bodies are therefore built to store and use oxygen in ways that support long underwater periods despite breathing air. Like other marine mammals, they do not breathe underwater through gills. However perfectly adapted they seem to ocean life, they remain mammals in this essential way. Every deep dive, every long feeding sequence, and every migration still unfolds within the limits of an air-breathing body. Their nostrils remain closed except during breathing at the surface. This keeps seawater out while the whale is submerged and helps protect the breathing system during dives. It is a simple but crucial part of how a mammal can live almost entirely in water without losing its connection to air. The blow seen above water is mostly warm, moist air condensing when exhaled, not ocean water sprayed from the lungs. People often imagine whales shooting seawater into the air, but the visible plume is mainly created by breath meeting cooler, outside air. That makes the blow more like a dramatic cloud of breath than a fountain from inside the body. Blue whales often travel at modest cruising speeds. Most of the time, they are not rushing through the ocean at top speed, but moving in a steady, efficient way suited to long-distance travel. This matches the needs of a large animal that must balance movement, feeding, and energy use over great ranges. Typical travel speeds are much slower than the brief bursts they can produce. Like many animals, blue whales have an economical normal pace and a faster pace they can use when needed. This difference allows them to conserve energy most of the time while still remaining capable of stronger movement in special moments. They can swim much faster when alarmed, interacting with other whales or changing position quickly. This flexibility helps them respond to sudden situations in the open sea. Even though their size may make them seem slow and heavy in the imagination, they are still powerful swimmers with meaningful short-term speed. Because of their size, they do not usually breach high out of the water the way humpback whales often do. Their immense mass changes what kinds of surface behavior are practical and common. A blue whale can certainly make strong movements near the surface, but it is not famous for the same aerial displays seen in some other whale species. Their surface behavior is usually more measured and less acrobatic. When seen at sea, blue whales often give an impression of quiet power rather than dramatic display. Their movement tends to feel smooth, deliberate, and immense, which suits their size and the open water habitats they usually occupy. Blue whales are found in every major ocean except the Arctic. This global range makes them one of the world's truly wide-ranging marine mammals. Yet even with that broad distribution, their presence depends strongly on food conditions, temperature patterns, and the larger structure of the marine ecosystem. They are generally absent from the central Arctic's ice-covered waters. This shows that a wide-ranging species can still have strong ecological boundaries. Blue whales are creatures of vast oceans, but not of every marine environment, and heavy ice-covered regions fall outside the conditions they usually use. Their distribution is strongly linked to where krill concentrate. If krill shift, whales may shift as well. This means the map of the blue whale is never separate from the map of ocean productivity, currents, and seasonal changes that gather prey into dense, usable patches. Many populations move seasonally between feeding areas and breeding areas. These large-scale movements connect different parts of the year to different kinds of habitat. Rich feeding grounds help whales build up energy, while warmer breeding regions are linked to mating, calving, and the early stages of calf development. Summer feeding grounds are usually in colder, food-rich waters. Cold, productive seas often support the dense krill concentrations blue whales need. In these places, the whales can take advantage of seasonal abundance and feed intensely during the times of year when prey is richest. Winter breeding grounds are usually in warmer, lower latitude waters. These regions may offer more suitable conditions for reproduction and for the early lives of calves. The contrast between cold feeding zones and warmer seasonal destinations is one of the grand patterns in blue whale life. Not every blue whale follows the same migration schedule. Even within a species known for broad seasonal movement, individuals can differ. This variation reminds us that migration is not a rigid machine-like process, but a living pattern shaped by food, age, experience, and changing ocean conditions. Some individuals appear to skip long migrations or remain in productive areas year-round. When food remains available, a whale may not need to travel as far as others. This flexibility can be useful in a changing ocean, where the best strategy may not always be the same from one year to the next. Researchers still do not know all of their migratory routes in detail. Blue whales are huge, but they live in such vast and often remote waters that following every movement is still difficult. Their size makes them easier to notice when present, yet the open ocean still gives them room to remain partly mysterious. Food availability appears to be one of the strongest factors shaping where they go. This is one of the central truths of blue whale life. However grand their migrations may seem, they are still grounded in a practical need. The largest animal on Earth must keep finding enough food in a changing and uneven ocean. Blue whales have relatively small eyes compared with the rest of their body. When people imagine the largest animal on Earth, they sometimes expect every feature to be enormous in the same dramatic way. But that is not really how biology works. The eyes are useful and important, of course, yet in the scale of the whole animal, they are surprisingly modest, which reminds us that the blue whale depends on more than simple visual power to understand its world. Vision is useful at close range, but long-distance perception in the ocean depends heavily on sound. Water often limits how far an animal can see clearly, especially in deep or murky conditions. So sound becomes a much better tool for staying connected with the wider environment. For a blue whale, hearing and acoustic awareness are often more important than eyesight when it comes to understanding what may be happening far away. Their sense of touch also matters, especially between mothers and calves. A calf stays close to its mother and needs guidance, protection, and steady contact in the early part of life. In an ocean that can feel wide and open, touch becomes one of the quiet ways a young whale remains physically connected to safety. Like other mammals, blue whales have body hair only in very limited amounts, mainly associated with sensory structures. They are not furry animals in the way land mammals are, because thick hair would not make sense for a huge marine animal living in water. Instead, the small amount they have is linked more to sensing than to insulation. A thick layer of blubber insulates the body. Blubber is a special form of body fat that helps hold warmth inside the whale even in cold seas. This matters because ocean water can draw heat away from the body much faster than air can, so insulation is essential for a giant warm-blooded animal living in marine environments. Blubber also serves as an energy reserve during migration and reproduction. It is not only a warm layer, but also stored fuel that can be used when food is less available or when energy demands rise. For a species that may travel long distances and invest heavily in calves, this reserve can make a major difference. In a feeding season, blue whales may build large fat stores. During times when krill is abundant, the whale is not just feeding for the moment, but also preparing for future periods when feeding may be weaker or more difficult. In that way, the productive season supports not only present survival, but later endurance as well. Those stores help support them when food is less available. A blue whale cannot rely on constant, perfect feeding conditions all year long because the ocean changes with season and place. Stored energy helps smooth out those changes, giving the animal a kind of biological savings account built from earlier abundance. Pregnant females especially depend on building energy reserves during productive feeding periods. Carrying a calf and later producing milk place huge demands on the mother's body. Because of that, success in reproduction is closely linked to how well a female has been able to feed and build reserves before those demands become greatest. Buoyant fat and streamlined shape together influence how blue whales move through the water. The body is not simply heavy mass pushing through the sea, but a carefully shaped form, supported and affected by what it contains. Even the distribution of tissue like blubber plays a role in how this giant animal balances movement, stability, and energy use. Blue whales have a broad U-shaped head when viewed from above. This shape is part of the feeding design of the animal, giving the front of the body a form suited to taking in huge volumes of water and prey. The head is not shaped only for appearance, but for function, helping guide the whale's extraordinary feeding style. Its dorsal fin is very small compared with the rest of its body. On such a massive animal, the fin can look almost modest or even surprisingly tiny. This contrast makes it one of the easiest examples of how ordinary body proportions change when an animal reaches such extreme size. That dorsal fin sits far back on the body, close to the tailstock. Its position helps observers identify the species when it surfaces, since the fin appears late in the sequence, after much of the back has already passed by. The placement also reflects the whale's long, drawn-out body shape and swimming mechanics. The flippers are relatively narrow and elongated. They are not broad like paddles in the way some people might picture them, but shaped in a way that supports controlled movement in open water. Their form reflects the balance between guidance, stability, and efficient swimming through a dense medium. The tail flukes are broad, thin, and powerful. These flukes provide the main force that drives the whale forward, pushing against the water in strong strokes. For a creature of such size, the tail has to deliver enormous power, and it does so with a structure that is both graceful and highly effective. Blue whales usually look blue-gray rather than bright blue when seen at the surface, the name to make people expect a vivid blue body, but in real life, the color is often more subdued and mixed with gray tones. This softer appearance is part of why the species can seem almost ghost-like in open water. Underwater, their skin can appear more distinctly bluish because of the way light passes through seawater. Water changes how colors are perceived, and the body may take on a more obviously blue quality below the surface than it shows in the air. This is one reason the whale's name makes more sense in some viewing conditions than in others. Their bodies often show mottled patterns of lighter and darker grey. These markings are not random decorations, but part of the natural variation of the skin. The patterning gives each whale a textured appearance and contributes to the distinctive look researchers learn to recognize. Those mottled patterns can help researchers identify individual whales. Because the markings are not exactly the same from one animal to another, scientists can use photographs to track individuals over time. This makes the skin pattern useful not just visually, but scientifically, allowing long-term study without needing to capture the animal. The underside can appear yellowish when diatoms coat the skin, which led to the old nickname sulfur bottom. Diatoms are tiny organisms that can gather on the whale's surface and change the color seen by observers. This small biological layer created one of the memorable historical names people used for blue whales. Blue whales have two blowholes on top of the head. These paired nostrils are the openings through which the whale breathes at the surface. Their position on the top of the head allows efficient breathing with only a small part of the body needing to break the water. Their blow can rise roughly 9 to 12 meters into the air in calm conditions. That tall column helps explain why whales may be noticed at a distance even before the full body is seen. A powerful exhalation from such a huge animal produces a visible sign that seems to momentarily connect sea and sky. The blow is tall and column-like, which can help observers distinguish the species at sea. Different whales can have somewhat different blow shapes, and experienced observers often use this as an identification clue. In the blue whale, the blow is one of the most striking surface features. Blue whales have throat pleats that run from the lower jaw down the underside of the body. These folds are a key part of the feeding system and allow the throat area to expand dramatically. Without them, the whale could not take in the massive volumes of prey-filled water that make its feeding style possible. These pleats expand dramatically during feeding. When the whale lunges into a prey patch, the underside stretches outward to hold a huge intake of water and krill. This transformation is one of the most impressive temporary shape changes seen in any animal. A blue whale does not chew its food. It does not use teeth to break prey into pieces before swallowing. Instead, it relies on engulfing, filtering, and then swallowing small animals that have already been separated from the surrounding water. Instead, it engulfs prey-filled water and then filters the water out. This method allows the whale to harvest huge quantities of tiny prey efficiently. Rather than chasing one target at a time, it processes a large moving volume of the ocean itself. The filtering structure is baleen, which hangs from the upper jaw. Baleen forms rows of flexible plates inside the mouth, creating a kind of living sieve. This system is what allows a giant mammal to feed successfully on such small prey. Baleen plates are made of keratin, the same structural material found in human fingernails and hair. That comparison makes the material easier to imagine, even though in the whale, it is organized into an entirely different feeding structure. A familiar biological substance is transformed into a tool for one of the largest feeding events in the animal kingdom. Blue whales can have hundreds of baleen plates, forming a giant sieve inside the mouth. The large number of plates increases the filtering surface available during feeding. Together, they make the whale's mouth function less like a predator's jaws and more like a highly specialized harvesting system. A blue whale's throat is not as wide as many people imagine for such a huge animal. People sometimes assume that an animal this large could swallow almost anything, but that is not true. The body is designed for filtering small prey, not for taking in large animals whole. That relatively narrow throat is one reason it cannot swallow large prey. Its giant size can be misleading, because outward scale does not mean every internal opening is equally huge. The feeding system is specialized for krill, and the throat reflects that specialization. Its diet is dominated by tiny crustaceans called krill. These animals are small, shrimp-like creatures that often gather in dense, drifting swarms. Blue whales rely on them so heavily that understanding krill is essential to understanding the whale itself. Krill are shrimp-like animals that often gather in dense swarms. A single krill is tiny and insignificant on its own, compared with a blue whale. But when millions gather together, they become the foundation of the whale's feeding strategy. This is one of the most powerful examples in nature of abundance being more important than individual size. Blue whales feed almost exclusively on krill in most parts of their range. They are not broad opportunists, eating a wide variety of large prey items. Their biology is tuned toward one main food source, which makes them efficient when krill are abundant, but also dependent on that abundance. The species uses lunge feeding, a method in which the whale accelerates toward a dense patch of prey. This is not passive drifting with an open mouth. It is an active, carefully timed movement that requires speed, coordination, and a precise judgment of where prey is thickest. During a lunge, the whale opens its mouth very wide and engulfs an enormous volume of water. In that moment, the front of the animal becomes almost like a giant expandable scoop. The scale of the water intake is so large that it helps explain why this feeding method is both powerful and costly. The throat pleats balloon outward as the mouth fills. This expansion changes the shape of the whale dramatically for a short time, allowing it to hold far more than its unexpanded form would suggest. The pleats are therefore not just folds in the skin, but a core part of a remarkable feeding mechanism. After closing the mouth, the whale uses its tongue and throat pouch to force water back out through the baleen. This stage is where the filtering really happens, because the water is expelled while the prey is held back. It is a controlled process that turns a chaotic gulp of seawater into a concentrated meal. The krill remain trapped on the inside and are then swallowed. By the end of the sequence, the enormous intake of water has been reduced to edible prey. This is how a giant whale turns the open ocean into nutrition, one filtered mouthful at a time. Lunge feeding is powerful but energetically expensive. Accelerating a body of that size, opening the mouth against drag, and processing the engulfed water all require serious effort. The whale gains a lot when the prey patch is rich, but it also spends a lot during each attempt. Because feeding is costly, blue whales do best when krill patches are especially dense. If prey is too spread out, the energy spent on lunges may not be worth the return. This means the whale's success depends not only on finding krill, but on finding krill concentrated enough to make the effort profitable. They often target the richest layers of prey rather than feeding randomly. This shows that their behavior is selective and responsive to fine details in the environment. A blue whale is not simply taking anything available, but appears to be making choices that improve feeding efficiency. Blue whales sometimes roll during feeding, which may help them align with prey patches. This body movement can improve the angle at which the whale enters the prey layer and increase the effectiveness of the lunge. It is one more example of how even giant animals use subtle motion to solve precise feeding problems. They can make repeated lunges during a single dive when krill are abundant. If the feeding conditions are good enough, one dive can include multiple opportunities to gather prey. This can make a dive highly productive, turning stored oxygen into a series of carefully timed feeding events. Their feeding behavior changes depending on prey depth and density. The whale responds not just to the presence of krill, but to how deep they are and how tightly they are packed. This makes feeding a flexible process shaped by the structure of the prey field itself. When prey is shallow, blue whales can feed with shorter dives and more frequent surfacing. In those conditions, the cost of reaching food is lower and the whale can cycle more easily between breathing and feeding. Shallow prey can therefore create a more convenient feeding pattern. When prey is deeper, they may spend longer underwater between breaths. Reaching those deeper layers takes more time and planning, so the whale adjusts its dive pattern accordingly. The need to balance air breathing with prey access is always present in this kind of feeding life. Studies using tags have shown that blue whales fine-tune their foraging to ocean conditions at surprisingly small scales. Modern instruments have revealed that they respond to details that may be invisible to human observers looking only at the surface. This tells us that the world of the blue whale is shaped not just by broad oceans, but by very precise patterns within them. Blue whales are born alive, rather than hatching from eggs. That may sound obvious once we remember they are mammals, but it is still an important part of their story. Even the largest animal on Earth begins life through live birth, with a mother carrying the young inside her body rather than producing eggs in the way many marine animals do. Gestation lasts about 10 to 12 months. This means the calf develops inside the mother for close to a full year before birth. For such a large species, that long period allows the young whale to reach a remarkable size before it ever enters the ocean on its own. A newborn calf is already enormous at birth. In most animals, the word newborn suggests something tiny and fragile, but in a blue whale, that idea changes completely. The calf is still very young and dependent, yet it enters the world already larger than many full-grown animals on land. Blue whale calves can weigh around 2 to 3 metric tons. That is an astonishing birth weight, especially when compared with the size of newborns in most other species. Even at the first stage of life, the scale of the blue whale is extraordinary. Newborn length is often around 7 meters. So from the beginning, the calf is not just heavy, but also very long. It starts life at a size that would already make it one of the largest creatures a human could ever see up close. Calves are nourished with very rich milk from their mothers. Because the calf grows so quickly, it needs a dense and powerful source of nutrition. The mother's milk provides concentrated energy that helps support one of the fastest growth periods known in the animal world. During the nursing period, calves grow at remarkable speed. Growth in a blue whale calf is not gradual in the ordinary sense. It is rapid, intense, and fueled by the mother's huge energetic investment, turning an already large newborn into an even more impressive young whale within a short time. Some commonly cited estimates say they gain roughly 80 to 90 kilograms per day. That means the calf can add an extraordinary amount of mass every single day while nursing. It is one of the clearest examples of how much energy must flow from mother to offspring in this species. Hourly growth rates are so high that they are often used as an extreme example in animal development. Blue whale calves grow at a pace so dramatic that scientists and educators regularly point to them when discussing the outer limits of mammalian growth. Their early development helps show just how unusual life becomes at such giant scale. This rapid growth is possible because the mother transfers a huge amount of stored energy through milk. She is not simply feeding the calf a little at a time, but pouring a major share of her own accumulated reserves into the young animal. In that way, the calf's rapid growth reflects the mother's earlier success at feeding and storing energy. The nursing period is often around 6 to 7 months. During that time, the calf depends heavily on the mother not only for food, but also for guidance and protection. Those months are a crucial phase in which the young whale becomes stronger, larger, and more capable of handling life in the open ocean. By the time weaning occurs, the calf is already far larger than most adult land mammals. That is one of the most striking things about blue whale development. Before it has even finished depending on its mother's milk, it has already reached a size beyond what many animals ever achieve in a full lifetime. Mothers and calves keep close contact during early life. The calf must stay near enough to nurse, breathe safely, and follow the mother's movement through the sea. That closeness also gives the calf a chance to learn the basic rhythms of surfacing, travel, and seasonal movement. The calf must surface often to breathe, because it is also an air-breathing mammal. Even at a young age, it shares the same basic need that shapes the life of every whale. No matter how large the body may become later, life still depends on returning again and again to the surface for air. A calf learns movement patterns, migration timing, and habitat use while traveling with its mother. Early life is not only a time of growth, but also a time of learning. By staying close to her, the young whale begins to absorb the routes, rhythms, and places that matter in blue whale life. Blue whale births are thought to occur mainly in winter or in warmer waters. These conditions may be more suitable for the early stages of life than colder feeding areas. The timing and location of birth, therefore, seem linked to calmer, warmer parts of the yearly cycle. Scientists know less about exact calving grounds than they know about major feeding grounds. Feeding areas are often easier to identify because whales gather there more predictably around food. Birth and early calf care can be harder to observe, especially when they happen far from shore and across broad, warm water regions. Mating likely also peaks during cooler season months in many populations. This fits with the general seasonal pattern seen in large migratory whales, where reproduction is tied to particular phases of the annual cycle. However, many details remain difficult to study directly in such a wide-ranging offshore species. Blue whales do not form long-term family pods in the way some toothed whales do. Their social structure is generally looser and less centered on permanent group living. Instead of staying in tightly bonded extended groups, they are more often seen alone, in pairs, or in temporary associations. Most maternal care is focused on the calf during its dependent period. The mother invests heavily in keeping the young whale alive and helping it grow during the early stage when it cannot yet manage fully on its own. Once that dependent period ends, the bond becomes less central than in species with more permanent family groups. Sexual maturity in blue whales is reached after several years, not quickly. These are slow-growing, long-lived animals, so reproduction does not begin early in life. Their life history is built around patience, delayed maturity, and long-term survival rather than fast reproduction. Age at maturity varies by sex and population. A blue whale in one region may not reach maturity at exactly the same age as one in another region, and males and females also differ somewhat. This variation reflects the fact that biology is shaped not only by species-wide rules, but also by local conditions and body differences. Estimates often place sexual maturity roughly between 5 and 15 years of age. That range is broad, but it still makes clear that blue whales take years before entering the reproductive stage of life. This slow pace is one reason populations do not recover quickly after severe decline. Females tend to mature at slightly larger body lengths than males. This fits with the general pattern that adult females are often somewhat larger. Since females carry calves and produce milk, their reproductive role is tied to especially high energetic demands, and body size may be part of meeting those demands. Physical maturity, meaning full adult body development, takes longer than sexual maturity. In other words, a whale may become capable of reproducing before it has reached its maximum adult size. This difference is important because growing up and becoming reproductively active are related, but they are not exactly the same biological milestone. Blue whales probably do not reproduce every year. The energy cost of pregnancy, nursing, and restoring body condition is simply too high for annual reproduction to be the norm. Instead, Females generally need time between calves to recover and rebuild reserves. Reproductive intervals are often measured in multiple years. This slow schedule means that each calf represents a major investment. It also means that population recovery is naturally limited by the biology of the species, even when external threats are reduced. Males may compete for access to receptive females. Although much of this behavior happens far offshore and is not always easy to observe, reproduction is not just a quiet pairing process. As in many animals, access to mating opportunities may involve social interaction, timing, and competition. Much of blue whale courtship behavior is still difficult to observe because it happens far offshore. The open ocean hides many parts of their lives from easy human study. Even in a species so famous and so large, important details of reproduction remain partly mysterious. Many details of mating behavior remain less understood than feeding behavior. Scientists know a great deal about where blue whales feed and how they use prey patches, but the private side of their lives is harder to document. Reproduction often leaves fewer visible traces than feeding, especially in animals that range widely across remote seas. Blue whales can live for many decades. Their lives are not short bursts of growth and reproduction, but long arcs that can stretch across much of a human lifetime. That long lifespan is part of what makes their biology both impressive and vulnerable. Lifespans of around 80 to 90 years are often cited. Some individuals may experience many ocean cycles, climate swings, and changing human pressures over the course of that time. In this sense, a blue whale is not only large in body, but also large in years. Some individuals may live even longer. Lifespan estimates are always shaped by available evidence, so the upper limit may not be perfectly known. Still, the possibility of even greater ages fits with the general pattern of blue whales as slow-living, long-enduring animals. Scientists can estimate age using methods such as earplug analysis in dead whales. Earplugs in whales are layered structures that can preserve a kind of growth record over time. By studying these layers, researchers can gain clues about how long an individual lived. Blue whale earplugs contain layered structures that can preserve a long-term record of growth. These layers work almost like a biological archive, storing information across the whale's lifetime. They provide one of the rare ways scientists can reconstruct age in animals that are otherwise difficult to measure through life. Their immense size does not protect them from all natural dangers. A body that large offers power and resilience, but it is not a perfect shield. Nature still places risks around them, especially for the young, the weak, or the unlucky. Killer whales have been documented attacking blue whales, especially calves or weakened individuals. These attacks show that even the ocean's largest animal is not entirely beyond challenge from other predators. A calf, in particular, may be much more vulnerable than a full, healthy adult. However, a healthy adult blue whale is an extremely formidable animal because of its sheer mass. For most predators, a full-grown blue whale is a very difficult target to overpower. Its size alone makes it one of the least vulnerable adult mammals in the sea. Most adult blue whales probably face greater overall danger from human-caused threats than from predators. In the modern world, ships, entanglement, noise, and environmental change are likely more important to adult survival than natural attacks. This shifts the main source of danger away from ecological rivals and toward human activity. Survival depends not only on avoiding death, but also on finding enough krill to meet very high energy demands. A blue whale can appear powerful and secure, yet it still depends on steady access to food. In such a large animal, missing feeding opportunities can become a serious biological problem. Before industrial whaling, blue whales were far more numerous than they are today. The ocean once held many more of these giants, moving through marine ecosystems at a scale difficult for us to picture now. Their former abundance is an important reminder of how much the modern world has changed. Commercial whalers targeted them for oil and other products. Their bodies were broken down into resources for human use, and their very size made them especially profitable. In that era, biological greatness became economic vulnerability. Their large size made each whale economically valuable to whaling fleets. A single blue whale represented a huge return in oil and other materials, which encouraged continued hunting. The qualities that made them extraordinary in nature also made them prime targets in industrial exploitation. Modern whaling technology made it possible to hunt fast, powerful whales that were previously harder to exploit. Steam-powered ships, explosive harpoons, and factory processing changed the balance between humans and great whales. Once those tools appeared, blue whales could be hunted at a far more devastating scale. Blue whale populations crashed during the 20th century. This was not a small decline, but a dramatic global reduction. In many places, what had once been a major presence in the ocean was reduced to a remnant. Antarctic blue whales were hit especially hard. The Southern Ocean became one of the great centers of industrial whaling, and the pressure there was immense. As a result, the largest form of the species suffered some of the most severe losses. In some regions, populations were reduced to only a tiny fraction of former levels. This kind of collapse affects not only numbers, but the entire rhythm of the species in those waters. What had once been common became rare, and what had once shaped the ocean strongly became much harder to see. Blue whales gained legal protection from commercial whaling in stages rather than all at once everywhere. Different regulations and agreements developed over time, and protection was not instantly complete or perfectly enforced. The path away from whaling was gradual and uneven. International protections expanded through the mid-20th century. Over time, governments and international bodies increasingly recognized the need to stop the destruction. These protections were a major turning point, even if they came only after enormous damage had already been done. Even after legal protections began, some illegal or unreported catches still occurred. Laws do not always end harmful actions immediately, especially in large and hard-to-monitor environments like the open ocean. So the recovery story of blue whales includes not only protection, but also the imperfect reality of enforcement. Blue whales are commonly seen off California in summer and fall. During those months, the waters along the California coast often become especially productive, and that creates feeding opportunities that can attract these giant animals. Their seasonal presence there has made the region one of the best-known places in the world for observing and studying them. Some of those whales later moved south toward Mexican waters. This southward movement shows that their seasonal pattern is not fixed to one coastline alone, but stretches across national boundaries. The journey reflects the larger rhythm of migration, in which blue whales track changing ocean conditions through the year. The Gulf of California is one area where blue whales are found in winter. That makes it an important seasonal habitat, especially when many other feeding regions are less favorable. In this warm water setting, blue whales become part of a different ocean scene than the colder northern waters they may use at other times. The Costa Rica Dome is another important area linked to blue whale feeding and breeding activity. This region is known for ocean conditions that can bring nutrients upward and help support marine productivity. Because of that, it becomes one of those special places where a giant whale can find both food and seasonal biological opportunity. In the North Atlantic, blue whales are regularly associated with Icelandic and nearby waters. These northern seas are productive and have long been recognized as valuable habitat for large baleen whales. Their repeated use by blue whales help show how closely the species is tied to places where ocean productivity is strong and reliable. The Gulf of St. Lawrence is also a well-known North Atlantic blue whale area. It is one of the better-known regions where people have been able to document the species in relatively accessible waters. Because of that, it has become important not only for whale ecology, but also for monitoring and conservation. In the southern hemisphere, Antarctic waters have long been key feeding habitat for the largest blue whale form. These cold waters are famous for supporting massive biological productivity, including dense krill populations. For the biggest blue whales, this part of the world has been one of the great feeding grounds on Earth. Indian Ocean and South Pacific regions are important for pygmy blue whales. These somewhat smaller blue whales occupy a different geographic pattern than the giant Antarctic form. Their presence across these broad southern waters shows that blue whale life is not one single, simple distribution, but a set of regional patterns shaped by form and habitat. At least several subspecies or geographic forms of blue whale are recognized. Scientists do not treat all blue whales as though they are exactly the same everywhere, because populations differ in size, range, and other traits. These distinctions help researchers better understand where whales live, how they are related, and how they should be protected. The Antarctic blue whale is generally considered the largest form. When people imagine the biggest possible blue whale, they are often imagining this southern form. Its great size reflects both regional history and the rich feeding systems of Antarctic waters. The pygmy blue whale is smaller than the Antarctic form. Even so, the word smaller can be misleading here, because these animals are still enormous by any normal standard. The distinction is useful scientifically, but in everyday terms, a pygmy blue whale is still an immense ocean giant. Pygmy blue whales are mainly found in the southern hemisphere. Their distribution helps separate them from northern blue whale populations and from the largest Antarctic form. This southern pattern is one reason scientists study them as a distinct regional type with its own ecological story. The northern blue whale form occupies the North Atlantic and North Pacific. This means blue whales in the great northern oceans are generally grouped apart from the southern forms. Their movements, habitats, and some physical or acoustic traits reflect that broad geographic separation. A northern Indian Ocean form is also often recognized. This adds another layer to blue whale diversity, suggesting that not all populations fit neatly into only a few simple categories. The oceans contain populations with histories shaped by long separation, regional conditions, and different migration patterns. Blue whale taxonomy is still discussed by scientists because populations are spread widely and not all are equally studied. In a species that ranges across huge ocean basins, classification is not always perfectly settled. As new acoustic, genetic, and movement data appear, scientists continue refining how these populations should be understood. Acoustic differences in calls have helped researchers distinguish regional populations. Because blue whales produce low-frequency sounds that vary from one population to another, researchers can sometimes tell who is present just by listening. This makes sound an especially valuable clue in a species that often lives far from shore and out of sight. Genetics has also contributed to understanding how these populations are related. Small tissue samples can reveal patterns of ancestry, separation, and connection among whale groups. In this way, genetics helps answer questions that appearance alone cannot fully resolve. Regional management often treats some populations as separate stocks, even within the same species. This matters because one population may face different threats or show different recovery patterns than another. Managing them separately allows conservation work to fit the actual lives of the whales more closely. Blue whales are usually seen alone or in pairs rather than in very large social groups. Their social life tends to be looser and more spread out than that of animals that travel in tight herds or pods. In the open ocean, this often gives them an appearance of quiet independence. Small, temporary groups can form where food is concentrated. When feeding conditions are especially good, individual spacing may tighten simply because many whales are drawn to the same resource. Even then, the gathering is usually more about shared feeding opportunity than about permanent social bonds. In especially rich feeding areas, dozens of blue whales may gather within the same broad zone. That does not mean they cluster tightly together, but it does show how strongly good feeding conditions can shape whale distribution. A productive patch of ocean can briefly bring many giants into the same general place. Even then, they are often more loosely spaced than tightly packed social animals. Blue whales do not usually move as one compact unit in the way some fish schools or land herds do. Their gatherings often look more like many individuals sharing a region than one dense social formation. Blue whales communicate with very low-frequency calls. These sounds are deep, powerful, and well-suited to underwater travel over long distances. In a world where visibility is often limited, such calls help create connection across the open sea. Many of these sounds fall in or near the infrasonic range, below what humans hear easily. That means a large part of blue whale communication happens partly outside ordinary human experience. Instruments can detect what our ears often cannot, revealing that the ocean may be full of whale sound, even when it seems silent to us. Their calls can travel great distances underwater. Low-frequency sound moves efficiently through the sea, especially across broad open water environments. This allows whales separated by great spaces to remain acoustically linked in ways that vision alone could never support. Hydrophones can detect blue whale sounds from far beyond visual range. A hydrophone is an underwater microphone, and it lets researchers listen into places their eyes cannot reach. This has become one of the most important tools for studying whales that may be many kilometers away or hidden by darkness, fog, or distance. The ability of low-frequency sound to travel through the ocean helps whales stay in acoustic contact across vast spaces. For a giant animal living in immense, often sparsely populated waters, this is a major advantage. Sound becomes a kind of long-distance bridge through the sea. Blue whale calls are among the loudest biological sounds known. Their voices suit the scale of the environment they inhabit, carrying through an ocean that would otherwise make long-distance contact extremely difficult. This power does not make the calls harsh or chaotic, but simply effective at traveling through water. Different blue whale populations have distinct call types and song patterns. This means the sound of a blue whale is not exactly the same everywhere in the world. Different populations can leave their own acoustic signature, almost like regional dialects shaped by geography and history. Researchers often refer to calls from some populations as A-calls and B-calls. These labels help scientists organize and compare patterns in whale sound recordings. By breaking calls into recognizable types, researchers can study behavior, timing, and population identity more clearly. These sound patterns help scientists identify which population is present even when the whales are not seen. That is one of the great strengths of acoustic work. A whale does not need to surface beside a boat to leave evidence of its presence, because its call may already have revealed who it is. Acoustic monitoring has therefore become a major tool in blue whale research. Listening stations, moored instruments, and long-term sound archives allow researchers to track whale presence over wide areas and across long periods of time. For a species that spends much of its life offshore, this is especially valuable. Blue whales do not sing in exactly the same way humpback whales do, but some males produce repeated patterned sequences. Their vocal behavior may be less famous to the public than humpback song, yet it is still structured and biologically meaningful. Repetition and pattern suggest that these sounds are not random noise, but organized communication. Their calls are thought to serve social and reproductive functions, as well as contact roles. A call may help whales remain aware of each other, and it may also play a part in mating-related behavior. In a vast ocean, a powerful low note can be both a signal of presence and a tool of social connection. Calling can occur throughout the year, though seasonal patterns vary by population. Blue whale sound is not limited to one short moment in the calendar. Instead, when and how often whales call depends on the population, the place, and the broader ecological context. In some areas, call rates change with feeding conditions and broader ocean climate. This means vocal behavior is linked not only to social life, but also to the physical state of the sea. If prey, temperature, or productivity changes, whale sound patterns may shift as well. Long-term studies have shown that blue whale song frequencies have changed over time in some populations. These changes are subtle but important because they show that whale communication is not completely fixed. Something in the living system of the species or in the ocean around it can gradually influence how the calls are produced. Human ears often miss the lowest notes, even though instruments record them clearly. So a person at sea may not realize that blue whales are communicating nearby. Science has expanded our awareness by letting us hear, through instruments, parts of the ocean that would otherwise remain hidden. Blue whales have excellent hearing adapted to low-frequency sound. Since so much of their communication depends on deep notes traveling through water, hearing in that range is essential. It allows them to receive information across distances where sight would be far less useful. Sound is especially important to them because visibility in the open ocean is often limited. Light fades with depth, water conditions can reduce clarity, and great distances separate individuals. Under those conditions, sound becomes the most practical way to stay informed about the wider environment. Ocean noise from ships can overlap with the frequency range blue whales use. This creates a serious concern because human-made sound may partly mask whale communication. If the background becomes too noisy, a whale's call may no longer travel or be heard as effectively as it once did. That overlap is one reason shipping noise is considered a concern for the species. It is not only the physical presence of ships that matters, but also the sound they add to the marine environment. For animals that depend heavily on hearing, a noisy ocean can interfere with ordinary life. Marine heat waves can alter krill distribution and also affect blue whale behavior. When the ocean warms unusually, the food system can shift in ways that ripple upward to the whales. The result may be changes in where they feed, how they move, and even how much they call. Recent work off California has linked stressful ocean conditions to reduced calling. That means silence is not always a sign that whales are absent, but may instead reflect ecological strain. Their sound behavior can therefore reveal something about the health of the environment around them. Acoustic silence in blue whales can therefore be an ecological warning sign rather than a sign that whales are absent from all nearby waters. Researchers have to interpret quiet periods carefully because behavior and stress can change how often whales vocalize. Listening is useful, but listening also requires context. Researchers can monitor seasonal whale presence even in darkness or fog by listening instead of watching. This is one of the great strengths of acoustic science. When the ocean cannot be read well by eye, it can still be studied by ear through instruments placed in the water. This is especially helpful for animals that spend much of their lives far offshore. Blue whales are often beyond the reach of easy visual surveys, especially in poor weather or at night. Acoustic methods allow scientists to keep learning from regions where human observation would otherwise be very limited. Passive acoustic monitoring has become one of the best ways to track blue whales over broad areas. It works by listening continuously rather than chasing whales directly with boats. This approach is efficient, less intrusive, and well suited to animals whose voices can travel so far underwater. Monitoring abundance is challenging because whale distribution can shift from year to year. A population may use a region heavily one season and differently the next, depending on food and ocean conditions. This makes counting whales much more difficult than simply returning to one fixed spot and expecting the same result every year. Researchers often combine sighting surveys, photo identification, and acoustics to estimate numbers. No single method gives a complete picture, so scientists build population estimates by blending several kinds of evidence together. This combined approach helps compensate for the limits of any one tool used alone. The eastern North Pacific population is among the best studied. Because these whales use regions that are relatively accessible to research along the US West Coast, scientists have been able to gather especially rich data there. As a result, this population has become one of the clearest windows into blue whale biology. This is partly because blue whales predictably use waters off the US West Coast. Predictable seasonal appearance makes fieldwork far more practical. When researchers know where whales are likely to be at certain times, they can plan studies that reveal much more about movement, feeding, and health. The California current supports dense krill layers that can attract many individuals. This current system helps create the productive feeding habitat that makes the region so important. In that sense, the success of blue whale research there is closely tied to the same ocean productivity that attracts the whales themselves. In the eastern North Pacific, blue whales are especially associated with the California current during the feeding season. This current system supports rich marine life along the western coast of North America, and that makes it a very important place for whales that need huge amounts of food. When blue whales return to this region, they are following one of the great seasonal feeding patterns in the ocean. That region becomes especially attractive when upwelling supports large krill blues. Upwelling happens when deeper, nutrient-rich water rises toward the surface, helping fuel marine productivity. When this process is strong, it can create the kind of dense prey conditions that make a feeding area worthwhile for the largest animal on Earth. Researchers have used drones, suction cup tags, and acoustic instruments to study blue whales in remarkable detail. These tools allow scientists to learn about whales without needing to capture or heavily disturb them. Because blue whales are so large and spend so much time far offshore, this kind of careful technology has opened a much clearer window into their lives. Drones allow body measurements without harming the whales. From above, researchers can estimate length, width, and overall condition by studying the shape of the animal at the surface. This gives scientists a gentle way to monitor health and growth in a species that would be impossible to examine in ordinary ways. Suction cup tags can record depth, movement, orientation, and sound. These temporary devices stay attached for a while and gather detailed information about what the whale is doing underwater. In this way, a tag can reveal a hidden day in the life of an animal that usually disappears beneath the surface beyond our sight. These tools have shown that blue whales make complex choices about where and when to feed. They are not simply giant animals drifting toward any prey they happen to encounter. Instead, they respond carefully to conditions in the water, choosing feeding opportunities in ways that show precision as well as power. Scientists can also compare whale diving data with maps of prey density. This makes it possible to match the whale's behavior with what is happening in the surrounding food field. When both sets of information are viewed together, the feeding decisions of the whale become easier to understand. This makes blue whales one of the best examples of how modern marine biology links animal behavior with ocean physics. The whale does not exist separately from currents, temperature layers, and productivity patterns. Its choices are woven into the movement of the sea itself, and studying the whale helps scientists see that connection more clearly. Some studies show they feed more heavily near finesse-scale ocean features that concentrate prey. These features may be small compared with the size of the open ocean, but they can make a major difference in where food gathers. For a blue whale, tiny shifts in water structure can turn an ordinary area into a rich feeding zone. Ship strikes are a major modern threat to blue whales. Large vessels move through many of the same productive waters that whales use for feeding and travel. When a collision happens, the size of the whale is not enough to protect it from the force of a fast-moving ship. Their size does not guarantee safety because large ships may not detect or avoid them in time. Blue whales surface, dive, and move in ways that may place them directly in shipping paths. Even a giant body can be vulnerable when the surrounding traffic is heavy and the warning time is short. Areas with heavy shipping can overlap with important feeding habitat. This is one reason the danger is so serious, because the same ocean conditions that attract whales may also support busy human routes. In those places, the whale is not only trying to feed, but also trying to live within a crowded marine landscape. When a whale is struck, injuries can be fatal, even if the ship crew never notices. A vessel may continue on its way while the animal suffers severe trauma below or beside the hull. This quiet invisibility is part of what makes ship strikes such a troubling conservation problem. Some management efforts try to reduce ship speed in whale hotspots. Slower speeds can lower the chance of a collision and may reduce the severity if one does happen. This is one of the more practical ways humans can make shared ocean space a little safer for great whales. Routing changes have also been used in some places to reduce collision risk. By adjusting where ships travel, managers can sometimes move the heaviest traffic away from the most important whale areas. Small changes in route can therefore have meaningful effects on the very large animal's chances of survival. Entanglement in fishing gear is another documented threat. Ropes, lines, and other gear in the water can become wrapped around whales as they move. For such a large animal, this may sound unlikely at first, but even giants can be harmed by persistent material that catches and drags on the body. Even non-fatal entanglements can drain energy and impair movement. A whale may still survive, but swimming, diving, and feeding can become harder and more costly. Over time, that extra burden can weaken the animal and reduce its ability to thrive. Chronic noise pollution may interfere with communication or habitat use. Blue whales depend strongly on sound, so a louder human-made ocean can affect how easily they hear one another and how well they can use their normal environment. Noise may not leave visible wounds, but it can still alter life in serious ways. Pollution and climate-driven ecosystem change can affect blue whales indirectly by affecting krill. The whale depends so heavily on its prey that any pressure on krill can ripple upward into whale health and behavior. In that way, even changes far down the food chain can matter to the largest animal in the sea. Climate change matters to blue whales largely through food web effects. It does not only act on the whales directly, but through the systems that support the prey they need. When the ocean changes, the first signs may appear in productivity, krill abundance, and feeding opportunities. Krill depend on ocean conditions that can shift with temperature, currents, and productivity. They are small animals, but their populations are tied to broad environmental patterns. Because blue whales rely on them so strongly, the fate of krill helps shape the fate of whales. If krill become less predictable, blue whales may need to change their migration timing or feeding locations. The whale's seasonal rhythm is built around finding dense prey patches, so changes in prey can force changes in behavior. This means climate-related disruption may be expressed through altered movement as much as through simple scarcity. Blue whales are therefore useful indicators of broader ocean ecosystem health. When their feeding, movement, or calling patterns shift, those changes may reflect something important about the sea around them. In this way, blue whales can help scientists read the condition of the wider marine environment. Their feces also play an ecological role by recycling nutrients into the water column. This may not be the most glamorous part of whale biology, but it is a meaningful one. What the whale releases back into the ocean can help support the productivity of marine systems. In that sense, blue whales do not only consume ocean productivity, they also help redistribute nutrients. They are not just users of the ecosystem, but participants in it. Their movement and waste can contribute to the cycling of materials that other life depends on. Large whales collectively can influence marine nutrient cycles across vast regions. Their bodies move nutrients through feeding, migration, and release in ways that connect distant parts of the sea. Even in this quieter, less visible role, they are still shaping the ocean around them. Blue whale feeding transfers energy from swarming krill into higher-level ecological processes. By consuming huge amounts of prey, the whale becomes part of how energy moves through the ecosystem. The animal is both a consumer and a link in a larger biological chain. Their long-distance movements can connect distant marine habitats. A blue whale may feed in one kind of ocean environment and travel through many others across the year. In doing so, it ties far-apart places together through its own living pattern. Protecting blue whales can therefore have benefits that extend beyond a single species. Because they are woven into food webs, nutrient cycles, and broad habitat connections, helping them may also support wider ecological stability. Their conservation is meaningful not only for the whale itself, but for the systems around it. Blue whales have been central to biomechanics research because they push the upper size limits of efficient lunge feeding. Their feeding style involves enormous bursts of intake and drag, making them ideal animals for studying how giant bodies can still operate effectively. Scientists learn about both whales and physical limits by studying how blue whales feed. Their feeding requires a balance between enormous gains in prey intake and enormous costs in acceleration and drag. Each lunge can bring in a huge reward, but it also demands major energy. The whale succeeds because its feeding strategy works best when those gains outweigh those costs. Scientists study blue whales to understand how body size shapes the limits of animal performance. At such an extreme scale, every system reveals something about what life can and cannot do. The blue whale becomes a living experiment in the possibilities of size. Their bodies show that very large size can work in water because fluid support reduces the weight-bearing problem seen on land. Water holds up much of the body and changes the physics of movement and support. This is one of the main reasons an animal of such extraordinary mass can function successfully in the sea. Their success also depends on seasonal prey bonanzas that are rich enough to fuel such a giant body. Without those periods of abundance, maintaining that scale would be far more difficult. In this sense, the blue whale is not only a product of its body, but also a product of the ocean conditions that make that body sustainable. The rise of giant baleen whales in Earth history appears linked to ocean changes that concentrated food more effectively. When prey became more densely gathered in certain times and places, giant filter feeders may have gained an advantage. This helps explain why such extreme size could evolve in marine mammals. Blue whales are therefore part of a bigger story about climate, ocean circulation, and the evolution of gigantism. Their existence is tied to large planetary processes, not just local biology. To understand a blue whale fully, we have to think not only about the animal itself, but also about the changing ocean world that shaped it. They are not simply scaled-up land mammals moved into the sea. Their anatomy and feeding system are highly specialized for marine life. Everything from the mouth to the lungs to the body shape reflects adaptation to water. Their greatness is not just size added onto a mammal body, but a deep reworking for ocean living. Their relatively low-density prey requires exceptional filtering capacity. Because krill are small and dispersed in water, the whale must process large volumes efficiently to make feeding worthwhile. This makes the filtering system one of the most important features of its biology. Few animals illustrate the connection between environment and body size as dramatically as the blue whale. The species shows that enormous bodies are not possible everywhere or under every condition. They become possible when the right combination of support, prey concentration, and marine structure comes together. Blue whales were once difficult for humans to study because they spend most of their lives offshore. Even though they are huge, they often live far from land and outside the places where people can easily follow them. Their size made them impressive, but it did not make them simple to understand. Modern research has improved because photo identification can recognize individuals over time. By comparing images of the same whale taken in different places or years, scientists can learn about movement, survival, and site use. This creates a long-term record without needing to physically mark the animal. The mottling near the dorsal fin is especially useful for this purpose in some populations. Those skin patterns act almost like natural signatures. A careful photograph of that region can help researchers know when they are seeing a whale they have seen before. Genetics from tiny biopsy samples can reveal sex and population relationships. A very small tissue sample can provide a surprisingly large amount of information. Through it, scientists can learn not only whether the whale is male or female, but also how it fits into broader population patterns. Hormone analysis from samples can provide clues about stress and reproduction. Chemical traces in the body can reveal things that are not obvious from simple observation. In this way, the whale carries quiet internal signals that scientists can sometimes read through careful study. Satellite tracking has improved knowledge of movement routes in some populations. By following tagged whales over time, researchers can see where individuals travel and how those journeys connect important habitats. This helps turn broad ideas about migration into real movement paths across the ocean. Acoustic archives allow scientists to look backward in time at whale presence across years or even decades. Recorded sound can preserve evidence of seasonal use long after the moment has passed. Listening to old data can therefore reveal patterns that were invisible when the recordings were first made. Blue whales are also studied from stranded carcasses, which reveal anatomy that cannot be measured easily in living animals. A stranded whale is a sad event, but it can also provide rare scientific opportunity. Internal structures, tissues, and relationships between organs become clearer when careful examination is possible. Much of what is known about their internal organs came from Wellingira material and rare modern necropsies. This means some knowledge was gathered under painful historical circumstances, while other parts come from uncommon present-day study opportunities. The anatomy of the blue whale has therefore been learned in fragments over time. Every new method adds detail because no single technique captures the full life of an animal that large and mobile. Sound, photographs, tags, genetics, and anatomy each reveal only part of the picture. Understanding the blue whale has become a quiet act of assembling many pieces into one living whole. Blue whales have inspired comparisons with human-scale objects because ordinary language struggles to describe such size. When something is far beyond daily experience, people reach for buses, cars, elephants, and other familiar things. These comparisons are not perfect, but they help the mind approach a scale that is otherwise difficult to hold. Their length is often compared to multiple buses placed end to end. That image gives a more concrete sense of how much living body is moving through the sea. And as that picture settles gently in the mind, we can let the blue whale drift once more into the wide, dark water, immense, quiet, and unhurried.